This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. Welcome to the show.
This is American Real TV,
There's so much to talk to you about.
where everyone
You are a true inspiration.
has
We're all trying to do our part to change the world.
a story.
What's your mission? What do you want your legacy to be? You have such a great story. I cannot wait to share it. Welcome to the American Real family. I cannot wait to air this episode.
And now, here's your host, Roger Brooks.
In 1959, Fidel Castro overthrew the Cuban dictator Batista, launching what many believe would be a new era of freedom. But instead, Cuba descended into communism, aligning with the Soviet Union and becoming a flashpoint in Cold War history. Just 2 years later, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, an attempt by U.S.-backed exiles to reclaim the island, marked one of the most pivotal and controversial chapters in U.S. Cuba relations. Today's guest, Jose L. Gonzalez, brings this era vividly to life in his powerful book, 90 Miles 2.0, The Culprit of Communism in the Americas. Based on actual events, the story follows Pepe, once part of the Fidel Castro's inner circle, who escapes assassination attempts and flees to the U.S., only to return as a CIA operative in a covert mission just before the Bay of Pigs. This is more than a historical thriller. It's a tragic love story, a gripping tale of survival, and a bold uncovering of truths long buried by history. Jose, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
And I'm so excited because you and I had a chance to meet in person just a few weeks ago down in Florida. You gave me a copy of your book, which is a signed copy, and I really appreciate that. But you put your heart and soul into this, and it came out beautiful. I'd love to know just your reaction about going through the process, getting the book done. I know you had an earlier version, but this one is just spectacular.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a lifelong effort. It's taken me 30 years to put all the facts together, get all the information, get some of the information that we actually put in the book declassified, as well as the effort of writing and rewriting and verification of facts and figures to get to this point. And when we published it the first time, there's some polishing that needed yet some to be done. And we finally did it with you and your publishing company. And we appreciate very much all the effort and all the hard work you two have put into this book. So we appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And I tried to give a little bit of the historical reference to the subject matter. But, if you could just kind of take us back, because this was obviously part of your life journey and your family's life journey. And we have such a wonderful Cuban community in our country that, especially down in South Florida where you reside. And, for the average person that may not have been there, or, younger folks who just don't understand the history, love to if you could give us a firsthand account, of what it was like to be part of that and, where we are today.
Sure. Let's go back to 1957. We'll start there and roll it forward. In 1957, Cuba was a very advanced, very American-like society. I mean, we had color television in 1959 in Cuba, just so you get an idea. Our society, our cities, our transportation, our infrastructure was a great little country. I mean, in fact, if you can go back and check, the actual monetary peso cubano, the Cuban peso, was equal to, at a minimum, to the U.S. dollar, 1-for-1.
Wow.
So that reflects the type of economy that we had. It reflects the type of society and culture that we had. We're very, very close to the American process, and American liberties are very similar in many respects. But unfortunately, we were allowed to be poisoned or corrupted, if you will. Internally, our government got corrupted with Batista, who was the dictator prior to Fidel Castro. And this gentleman, who was corrupted by mostly the mob, he was bought and sold, paid for by the mob. He's the one that kind of like laid the groundwork to some degree, unknowingly, to create the situation that became the Fidel Castro Revolution. In 1957, in Union City, New Jersey, is where the Cuban Revolutionary Party indeed was founded. And that's where the story of 90 Miles 2.0 begins. Because I got pictures of them, Fidel Castro, and the Great Seven, the seven families that helped them immensely financially to fund the Revolutionary Party were there, in addition to other many entities that were interested in making sure that the Cuban Revolution was done to take Batista out. Unfortunately, nobody knew and nobody really understood that we were funding an individual who fooled many people, a communist, indeed, at heart. Who he revealed that way in 1960, after he became the president, if you will, of the island. So it was difficult. It was very difficult. In 1957, like I said, it was founded, the Cuban Revolutionary Party. There are pictures in the book that show in Union City, New Jersey, many, many meetings where they were raising money, and you could see the money on the table in those pictures, and all the people that were there, and the American flag and the Cuban flag, and the people that were participating, and all this money that was obviously put together, collected, was used for the Cuban Revolutionary Party. And it was unfortunate. But what's really sad is that they allowed not only for all these people to contribute, but also even the mob got involved with contributing also. So it was very, very difficult to put this story together because it was emotional, it was fact-finding, it was lengthy, it was some of it was classified. I had to be very careful. I still have to be very careful even today, but it was worth every ounce of effort that we put into it. And so the story begins in Union City, New Jersey, as a result of the revolution, where the Revolutionary Party is founded and where the money comes in, and then how that money is going to be distributed and who's going to be doing what, when, and where. And then eventually, obviously, in 1960, when he takes over, 1959, when he takes over, we have the story begins there, and it goes through. Unfortunately, out of the seven families that really helped him raise that money, out of the seven families, six of them were eliminated, which was unbelievable. And Pepe was the only one that was left. And he was left only because his fiance, who at that time had become impregnated by Pepe, never told Pepe that she was pregnant with a child, so that Pepe could leave Cuba, in a clandestine way, to be able to keep his health. Otherwise, he would have been eliminated too, like the other six were.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell the whole story, but that's where
No, that's great. And are you able to share who Pepe is and the relation there?
Sure. Pepe, in essence, is an individual, Jose Cruz Alvarez, and everybody call him Pepe. And he was an individual that he was one of the instrumental people that helped me put the whole story together. I have videotape of him telling me the story. Okay. And he tells me the story on videotape, and I reduce it to writing. And he, in essence, is a student of the University of Havana, of law school at University of Havana. And he was obviously colleague of Fidel Castro at the time when they were going to college to become lawyers in Cuba. The fact also remains is that everybody knew Fidel Castro. In fact, he had a nickname called Dirtball, Bola de Churre, Dirtball. And everybody called him that. He carried a 38 with him, just to give you an idea. Not very common in Cuba in those era, but that's the way it was with Fidel Castro.
Mm. And the way you were able to acquire these photographs and get all this information was through Pepe as well?
Pepe as well, yeah. He was instrumental. Rest in peace, he's passed away. But yeah, he was very, very, not only did he tell me the whole story, he provided me the pictures, he provided me many of the documents. Then I had my uncle also on the other side, who was also named Pepe, by the way. Um, he gave me a lot of other additional supplemental information, and between the two of them, I was able to gather the information. It wasn't just one source. I really had like 4 or 5 sources of information that once put together, it all kind of fit like a crossword puzzle. And it was easier to put that whole story together. And it's a true story. It's based on actual events. So, I mean, we can start the story and tell you briefly, for example, people don't know this, but the only reason why the Bay of Pigs invasion really was an absolute debacle is because there was a clandestine operation called a CIA operation, 90 miles, you know, that operation ran 48 hours before the Bay of Pigs invasion. And the reason they did that is that the purpose of that incursion into Cuba by 10 Marines, if you will, because back then Navy SEALs didn't really exist. They were special ops people, but they weren't called Navy SEALs, but they're equivalent to Navy SEALs today. They went in, these 10 men went in, of which one of them was Pepe, okay? He went in with the other 9 men, and the purpose of the mission was to determine the extent of military capability that Fidel Castro had already developed, because they had had rumors and information that indicated that they already had, nuclear SS-19 missiles in Cuba. Come to find out, as a result of their mission, which happened roughly 48 hours before the Bay of Pigs invasion, they found out that not only did they had over a dozen SS-19 missiles in Cuba, 3 of them ready to launch, okay, anytime, because they were set up already. Not only did they know that, but they also came across thousands of Russian troops in Cuba as well. And
So,
that was absolutely kept quiet by the U.S. government for many years. That was the reason they stopped the air support, because the United States promised air support to the 1,500 men that were participating in that Bay of Pigs invasion. Approximately 1,500, could have been 1,450 or something like that. But 1,400 men that actually disembarked in the Bay of Pigs, right? Those men that disembarked, they were depending on air support, because the ships in the Bay of Pigs that had the ammunition, that had the supplies, that had everything to support that invasion, if they don't get air support, they're cooked. No invasion will work without any air support. So what happened was, when JFK found out from the operations, when he was told, no, listen, our operations 90 miles indicate that there are Russian troops, that there are SS-19 nuclear missiles in Cuba, immediately JFK, what did he do? Turn off the switch and said, no air support for the CIA Bay of Pigs invasion. And therefore, without aerial support, it was destined to absolutely fail the Bay of Pigs invasion. And it
and
did.
what was his reasoning for that? What was he trying to protect?
Well, when he realized that he had Russian troops and SS-19 nuclear missiles in Cuba, JFK apparently did not want to risk the opportunity to have a nuclear war.
Yep.
Or some type of more serious war than what he intended to do with the CIA. So
Okay. Trying to
having gotten
prevent
that new
bigger
information,
conflict. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
which actually ended up happening in October of '62, right? The Bay of Pigs was first the invasion, but then you had the missiles of October, if you remember, in 1962. Well, from the point of 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion to 1962, the American government knew that they had nuclear missiles and they had Russian troops in Cuba. Yet they did nothing like that was ever told in the media. And I ended up cooperating with the wrong people again.
Jeez. So this version of the story that you tell is there information here that's never been told? Or is
Oh,
your version of
absolutely.
the story known?
No, nobody knows about the Bay of Pigs invasion. I mean, nobody knows about the 90 miles special ops, because that was kept confidential and quiet by the federal government at all times. That's the only reason they pulled the plug on the CIA operation, which was the Bay of Pigs invasion. right? They stopped because they said that we're not going to take the risk. We're not just going to take the risk. Forget about 1,400 men. In fact, if you look at history again, history tells always the truth, which is great. After the Bay of Pigs invasion, when all those men, 1,300 of them were caught, approximately 200 were killed, and about 12 to 1,300 were unfortunately taken prisoners. A few years later, what did America do? They bought back every one of those prisoners from Cuba in exchange for deals that were, again, kept confidential. And then one of the deals was that America promised never to allow another invasion of Cuba to the Soviet Union at that time. And it kept his word, as you know, because right now we still have Fidel Castro. Oh, at that time, they still had Fidel Castro 40, 50 years later. Now Fidel Castro is dead and his brother took over and his brother is getting too old. So now they appointed somebody, but it's the same regime, the same identical regime.
So I have to ask, I mean, in today's day and age, and you mentioned it earlier that, there's some things that are still confidential. The JFK files are coming out. The president is releasing some of this information. That we have Russia and Ukraine that we're dealing with. We have all kinds of conflicts in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, and it doesn't seem like people are talking much about Cuba these days. Do you think the information that you have and other information that's been buried, shouldn't the American people know what actually happened?
That's one of the main reasons why I decided to write this book and put the truth forth, because it's very important that the truth be told. Okay. Many people were not told many things, many decisions have been made based on false information. So now I'm trying to bring this up once and for all because it's extremely important, not only for us, but for all the generations that are coming. Now, with regard to one of the problems America is going to have in the not too distant future is that now in Cuba, you not only have Russian submarines there all the time in their own base, they have that. They, as a matter of fact, not too long ago on national TV, you saw a Cuban on Bay of Havana, the chip channel there. They saw a Russian submarine, and then what did the Biden administration say? They said, "Oh no, that Russian U-boat, that Russian submarine really doesn't have nuclear warheads in it, right?" Well, I got beachfront property in Kansas, if you're interested, if you believe that. There's no way in hell that they have a Russian sub that doesn't have nuclear tips on it. And obviously that was in Cuba. So now the problem is, how far is America going to want to go? Because the problem is America has not recognized one thing. All of the problems that today exist in the Americas that are tied to socialism and communism are founded from Cuba. Fidel Castro helped Nicaragua. Fidel Castro helped Venezuela. Fidel Castro helped every socialist movement in Latin and South America. And that poison right in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, unfortunately, is what has contributed to all the pain and all the money and all the problems that the culprit of communism, which happens to be Cuba and Fidel Castro, have created throughout this hemisphere. All of that could have been avoided if at that time Cuba would have been taken care of. Now, what's going to happen is going to be kind of like Taiwan in reverse. In Taiwan, you have a situation where you have China begging to take over Taiwan. Why? Not only for manufacturing of chips, but logistically as a place to have a good military outpost to protect mainland China. It's a perfect place for it. That's why they're doing all that sea, and you see all that on the Indochina Sea area. How China is developing bases and everything to protect itself. Well, if we don't protect ourselves here, by doing something with Cuba, Cuba is going to be armed to the teeth, perhaps with not only Russian but also Chinese, weapons, and they're going to be 10 minutes away from America. America will not have time with the supersonic missiles. Miami will be dust in 5 minutes. Washington, D.C. will be dust in 15, you know, and that's what worries me. That's one of the reasons too. I'm trying to make sure people read this book and see it. And that's why I wrote it in English and in Spanish. In the same book, the first half is all in English, the entire story in English, and second half is all in Spanish. And
Yeah.
it's extremely important that people read it because it is entertaining, but it wasn't meant to be entertaining because they're facts.
Right. No, and I did want to get to the book, especially the way you wrote this. It's in a screenplay style, so people could really get the visual of the book. So very well done. Wonderful that you put it in two languages. I think that's brilliant because of the audience, and families could share it. Maybe the younger folks are reading the English, and the older generation is reading the Spanish. But I just wanted to show a couple of the images in here as well. But what would you say to folks, because I know we want to get on to a few other topics. Um, why should they read this book, not only from a historical perspective, but from a current events perspective?
If we forget our history, we end up repeating it. And what I see, if we don't take care of Cuba now, while it's a good situation and good time to do it, look what's happened in Panama. Okay? What's China tried to do right now, right? And right now we're trying to reverse what's happening in Panama. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. I think what you're going to see in Cuba is going to be something perhaps even worse because Cuba is in a strategic location. I mean, if you want to get to anything in the Gulf of America, as is known today, or part of Gulf of Mexico, right? Cuba can control that whole channel go coming in, as well as even from Cuba, from the tip of Cuba, you can obviously control parts of the Panama entry as well. So it's extremely important. And I wrote this book. Obviously, my objective, hopefully someday, is that this will be informative, so that it can be turned into perhaps a feature film that will help people understand, kind of like a World War II movie. You saw Ryan, when the search for Ryan, remember?
Saving Private Ryan,
That
yes.
Private Ryan, exactly. That was a great book about Second World War, where I think a book like 90 Miles 2.0 can be turned into a similar type of artistic film that would not only inform people of something that did happen, but also help them understand that they're at risk right now. That's why it's the culprit of communism in the Americas, and I make that as a subtitle.
Yeah. Well, look, I know you mentioned know your history, right? And that's a great point. I know education is extremely important to you. You are a CPA by profession. You played football at the University of Miami, and but if you can touch on education, not indoctrination, as well as the U.S. economy, those 2 points, uh, your perspective on that as part of this, knowing your history.
The most important thing we have to do in America, especially, or in every country, every culture, is we must educate our young. We must prepare our young. We must protect our family unit because education starts at home. It doesn't start at the schools, it starts at home. And education is the number one thing that will help us fight off these absolute radical ideas and movements that all they do is, first thing that they try to do is disconnect the children from the parents. That's the first thing they try to do. And how do they do that? I could tell you a couple of ways. I don't know if I want to get that political at this point in time, but there's a couple of ways that they do that. I mean, obviously, colleges and universities today are not what they should be, I think. I think we could be doing a lot better. So education is key for us to be able to, have a better society, a better culture, not forget where we came from, our values, our fundamentals. This country, America, was based on, great values and great principles. And we have seemed to have forgotten them because we don't even teach them anymore. In fact, today, you cannot read a Bible in school, which is unbelievable. Why not? I find that amazing. Talk about First Amendment, right?
Right.
So there's so many things about, to me, education is very close to my heart. That's what gave me what I have today. I came November 2nd, 1960 to this country, didn't speak English, barely knew how to speak Spanish at 8 years old at that time. And yet, if it wasn't for my mother and father who installed it, I mean, they really ingrained in me the value of education. I wouldn't have never gotten, my accounting degree from the University of Miami. I would have never gotten my CPA, certified public accountant. I've practiced for 40 years. So there's so much value and so much, there's not enough I can say about education in our culture here today. We must protect it. We cannot allow it to be poisoned and infiltrated by other ideas, radical and otherwise.
Yeah. And I know coming from you, it's not just lip service. You actually walked away from a potential professional football career. So just if you could give us a few minutes backdrop on your,
Sure.
because education was so important in your family and instilled in you by your parents, as you mentioned, but you also had this wonderful athletic ability that you were able to get to college on. So tell us that story.
Yeah. Sure. I went to school, to Miami Senior High School. Graduated in 1971 from Miami Senior High School. And by the way, I was indoctrinated in April of about, I think it was 22, into the Miami Senior High School Hall of Fame. And I'm very proud of that. But the issue is this, that the education, the background that my mother and father instilled in me, is the founding root of what I consider my life success. I was good enough. I learned how to play football at Miami High. Okay, because when I got there, I was a big guy, 6'4", 250 pounds. That's a pretty good sized kid.
Yes.
So as soon as they got me, they brought me in and they said, "No, you're going to be a defensive lineman." And I didn't even know what that meant. But I had some great coaches at Miami Senior High School. Gene Wilson, phenomenal coach. Uh, Beck was another good coach. Danelli was a good coach. Had some great coaches at Miami High, and they made me a good enough football player where many universities came to scout me and try to sign me to go. At that time, it was Bear Bryant, Alabama,
Wow.
Georgia. Even I even had an opportunity to go to the academy, to go to Army.
Wow.
I had a senator ready to sign a good letter for me and send it off, but I had my grandparents were kind of not doing too well. They were old and they were sick, and I needed to stay close to home, so I decided to sign with UM. So I signed a 4-year scholarship with the University of Miami, the good old Hurricanes, and got my education at UM, a good accounting education. I had a good school, and then after 4 years, on my fourth year, I had a couple of great scouts come down from the Oakland Raiders. They saw me in practice and games, they saw my films. They liked me enough, and they signed me. So before I know it, I'm in Santa Rosa, California, training camp with the Oakland Raiders.
What did your parents
So,
say? What was your parents'
well,
reaction? Because they're coming from,
my
yeah.
father, yeah, my father was so happy. He said, "You made it, you made it." So he's very happy. But it didn't go well for me at Oakland. I got the next year I got traded to the Eagles. That was the first year Dick Vermeil was there.
Wow.
And talk about a coach. He was a good coach too. And Dick Vermeil, they signed me, brought me Widener College in Philly. That's where we used to have training camp.
Okay.
And enjoyed that. That was a wonderful experience. But when I was in training camp, I realized one thing. I realized that, is this what I want for the rest of my life? I mean, I'm here. I made it. I do I want this for the rest of my life? And by that time I had gotten married and had a little kid, and my responsibilities at home were very important, and had an education, for me to use. So I decided to literally, I walked out of training camp in Philly in
Wow.
1977. So it was hard decision to make, but it was the right decision, because as soon as I got back, I started my accounting career with Ernst and Ernst. Back then they were called Ernst and Ernst. Today they're called
Kidding.
Ernst and
Wow, I
Young.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
yeah,
And they still
yeah. So I
recruit, by
started.
the way, at the University of Miami because our son goes there, as you know, and Ernst and Young is there recruiting still today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, the partner in charge of the Ernst and Young office was Harold Walker, and he looked at me and says, "You know, we need a good first baseman for our softball team. You're coming on board."
That's
So
great.
I'm saying that as a joke, but that he really
Sure.
did say that. So I started my job, Ernst, and boy, it was tough because I had been almost 3 years out of accounting altogether. And what happened was, you know, when I went to school, it was, accounting principles were APBs. All of a sudden, a new associate called the Financial Accounting Standards Board, the FASBs, were created. And as a result of the FASBs, I had not read or kept up with that because I was playing football, right?
Sure.
Uh, I had to go. I went back to school for another year, and got additional accreditation, and as a result, was able to catch up on my accounting to get my CPA because that CPA exam is tough to pass.
I'm sure. Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful. What a wonderful story though. And um, I guess uh, Jose, looking back, um, and and where we are today in our world, what do you feel is next between the U.S. and Cuba? Is there any potential for some type of an agreement where you know democracy can potentially thrive there once again?
I think America needs to pay more attention to its hemisphere. America has had a tendency to spend a lot more time in the Middle East, for example, or in the Far East, rather than right in their backyard, which is the Americas. The fundamentals of their politics is, I think, have been skewed. I don't know why. I think it's been financially driven, perhaps because of the wars. But I think that just as we today, the United States is looking at Greenland and looking at Canada, I think they should be looking at Cuba just as equal and say, hey, we need to take, just like China is doing, just like China is trying to do, in their off their coast
Sure.
in the Pacific, right? We
Taiwan.
should be doing the same thing. We should be doing the same thing here to protect ourselves. And Cuba could be strategic, very strategic, because from there you can actually create an outpost that can help us and launch from Cuba, not socialist ideas and radical, governments, but rather capitalist, good old-fashioned democracies into countries like Nicaragua and Venezuela, which needed help. I mean, look at right now. Look at Colombia. With this president that they have, Petri. It's unfortunate, and that's a result of being next to Venezuela, which is Maduro, which is communist. So all of these things. I mean, we must look at Cuba as an opportunity to set up that launch pad from there to protect all of the Americas. And America should put Cuba as one of the top 2 or 3 priorities in their political objectives for this administration.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. And it's scary to think about the alternative, right? So I don't think we have a choice in this matter. It's just when is this going to become a priority? And hopefully
Yeah.
it soon. But it's great timing on the release of your book. What can people do to get involved and participate in, at the local level or in, state or federal level? What advice do you have for those people of being involved?
Getting got to get involved in our community governments, in our local governments. Become a commissioner, become a mayor, become a representative. We have to get involved. We have to protect our values. We have to make sure that we get involved in our children's education from the beginning through college, not cut it off at the 12th grade and say, okay, from now on it's university. No, these universities, just like UM or Florida International University, which is also a very good school, or Barry University in Miami, or any other universities in South Florida, including South Florida. We need to make sure that we protect those areas, those schools, so that they don't get infiltrated with ideas that are not healthy for this country. And the best example of this is what's happening today in New York, right? We have a serious problem in New York. I mean, just because you have a license or just because you have a permit to come to this country and study doesn't mean you have the right to become a terrorist.
Yeah.
And start pushing radical ideas. It's a privilege, just like the country says. So therefore, don't misuse that privilege. Respect the rules and the laws and the regulations of this country, because that's why this country is the best country in the world, without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, look, I so appreciate you spending time with us today, sharing your story, sharing the story of the book. We are going to put links in the body of this episode. But tell us what's the best place for people to go? I know you recently put out an audiobook as well. So where can people go to find the book, to find you, and get a book of their own?
You can go to my website. It's joselgonzalez.com, or you can go directly to Amazon. And if you type in Amazon, when you do your search, 90, the number 90 miles, 2.0, you're going to find my book. And I'm very happy to say also that it's been, as a bestseller there. And thanks to my publisher here, it's a bestseller, and you're going to love. It's not only entertaining, but it's historical value. You'll love it. And what's great is that you can get the audiobook both in English and in Spanish just buy one and you get both of them. So, I mean, even if you're learning to speak English or you're learning to speak Spanish, I think it's going to be a great book for you because you can read it in English and Spanish, or you can listen to it, an audiobook in English or in Spanish.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant for you to do that. That's wonderful. Jose, last question before I let you go. I'd like to ask all of my guests on the podcast. You have a lot of life to live, but at the end of the day, what do you want your legacy to be?
It's a good question. Very good question. I just want to I'm content. If I had to live my life all over again, I'd do it the same way. I wouldn't change a thing. I just want society, people, to appreciate and thank God for what we have, especially here in America. All the values, all the benefits. I just finished coming from a country in South America, not to mention the name, where a lot of hard work and suffering is going on right now. Unfortunate. So I just want to be, thought of as somebody who tried to help citizens of all countries to understand that there is no better way of government than a good democracy, a republic, and use the United States of America as a shining city on a hill, like they used to say. I just wanted to think of me as somebody who tried to inform them, trying to help them, and tried to achieve my humble goals and objectives.
Awesome. Jose Gonzalez, author of 90 Miles 2.0. Welcome to the American Real family. Thank you so much for being a guest today. We will put the links in the show notes where people could get the book. And I cannot wait to air this episode. You're a wonderful human, and thanks for all that you do.
God bless you, and God bless all the readers and out there that hopefully purchase my book or listen to it. I hope they enjoy it, and I would love to hear back from them on my website.
Awesome. We'll be sure to put it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to American Real. For more stories like this one, be sure to stop by AmericanReal.tv. Follow us on all social media to stay up to date with everything American Real. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and contact one of our publishing experts if you're ready to publish your book and become a best-selling author.